Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rechak Wadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. I have an article here that I found the headline pretty interesting with the topic of the federalization, right, or the police state, or the Trump takeover, whatever name or nomenclature is suitable for this. But anyway, the headline reads, amid DC takeover, Trump eyes crime in other cities. Here's what to know. Now, before I do this, actually, I want to look up here. What is okay? So, this is I just typed in here, what is martial law? And it says here, martial law is the temporary imposition of military rule over a civilian population, usually in response to a crisis or emergency where civil authority has been disrupted. It essentially replaces civilian governance with military authority. This can involve the military taking over law enforcement, judicial functions, and other aspects of governance normally handled by civilian authorities. One key thing to note here is the word or the term temporary imposition of military rule. Temporary is subjective, right? 5 minutes is temporary. 5 months is temporary. 5 years is temporary, right? The only thing that is, constant or universal about something being temporary is that it's not permanent, right? You know what it's not, but in terms of what it is, it's somebody can say it's a short duration of something, but the word short is also subjective to whoever is seeing it, right? And in general, somebody's definition of short may be another's definition of long. So when you see that temporary, you've been conditioned to think of short periods of time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be short according to what you think short is. Short or temporary could be as long as it takes until we get where we want to get. So it says here, here's a more detailed explanation. Temporary. Martial law is not intended to be a permanent replacement for civilian rule. It is typically declared for a limited time until the crisis is resolved and normal civil authority can be restored. And what's interesting about that is the normal civil authority that is restored oftentimes isn't really, depending on how severe the martial law implementation is, sometimes the end of it doesn't look anything like the beginning of it, right? Meaning what they had to do to bring order, to allow things to go back to a normal civil authority it will cause so much change in the people and in how civil authority now looks that it might not be the same as before that martial law was declared. It says here, military authority. So under martial law, the military assumes control, often taking over tasks traditionally performed by civilian agencies like the police, courts, and legislative bodies. So what that means is things are going to be different, right? You're not in your normal, as we read above, civil authority, to where the way that law enforcement handles situations is different now, because now the military is taking over. Martial law is usually declared in response to situations such as war, natural disasters, civil unrest, or other emergencies that overwhelm the capacity of civilian authorities to maintain order and security. So there are phases to it. But what's interesting here is when there is war, the interesting thing about this is the targets, right, or the focus. Natural disasters, you may declare martial law because it's chaos, right? It's an emergency and you need things to be to go according to a certain, a certain plan for things to work out smoothly, right? And in cases like a crazy natural disaster, most people would say, yeah, do what you got to do and just get us out of here. But when you have something like a civil emergency or like civil unrest, the target which is causing this emergency are the people. And that's one of the harsher forms of this, because it's not about evacuating somebody from a flood or a earthquake or anything like that, where the bad guy or the boogeyman is the earthquake, the danger that it's caused, and you're trying to help people. Here with civil unrest, the boogeyman are the people, and if they're causing this, then they're the ones that are targeted, okay, or the dissidents among them, to fix this problem. So as they've now, spun the narrative to where now the focus is on cleaning up these cities, right? From homelessness to just unruly behavior, all of that. And they're trying to provoke people to a point where it makes sense to escalate to like a military takeover versus what you're seeing here. So just keep that in mind as time goes on, and these more states start normalizing this police state in more areas. I'll read one more part on this, and I'll read certain parts of the article here. So we have your Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act generally restricts the use of the military or law enforcement purposes within the country, but there are exceptions, including situations where martial law is declared. So people are not aware of this because they've never experienced something like this, right? Most people, that is. And so when they don't understand the severity of it, which is why when we emphasize it and stress it, to them it's just like, yeah, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. He can't do that. He can't do this. But some people say that from a standpoint of ignorance. So anyway, let's read a little bit of this article. When federalizing the local police and deploying the National Guard in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump has suggested he could flex his authority to fight violent crime elsewhere. We have other, quote unquote, we have other cities also that are bad, very bad, the president said during an August 11 press conference. He listed Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, Oakland, and Baltimore among the cities of concern. So if you start going in there and, you start facing opposition that is backed by maybe, say, Democratic rulers or leaders in those different states, and you now have people like actually fighting back, if it gets to the point where now it becomes violent, what do you think Trump is going to sit there and say, yeah, just let him assault you or shoot at you or whatever the case is, and you just call it a day? That's not going to happen. He's going to give them the ability to pull that trigger. It says, although homicide and other violent crimes have recently dipped across America, the numbers from big cities are still high, in some cases higher than they were before surges 1 to 2 decades ago. Trump's power to deploy the National Guard outside the nation's capital is also under debate. A federal judge is deciding whether his deployment of troops in Los Angeles was lawful. Here's what you should know. The president's powers. Trump federalized D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department after declaring a crime emergency. He did so under Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, which lets him control the district's police for up to 30 days without congressional authorization. He wants Congress to extend that power, suggesting a national emergency declaration could be a means of sidestepping the legislature if it does not act. And that's what you're going to find out with a lot of these acts, emergencies, and declarations. There's ways in which they have on the books loopholes to sidestep or go around it. All right. It says here, there is no equivalent to the DC Home Rule Act in other big cities, in the other big cities Trump named. There, state and local authorities have control over law enforcement. The National Guard is a trickier question. So it's going to get real interesting when it gets into these nitty gritty gray areas, where now it becomes well, I'm going to do this, but you don't have the power to do this, and then a back and forth, and eventually it just turns into a, well, I don't care if I don't have the power to do this, I'm going to do it anyway. Let's see. Let me see what else we got here. Just skimming through the jumps to the important parts. Trump highlighted other possible solutions involving Congress, which is currently in its August recess. We'll count on the Republicans in Congress and the Senate to vote to end no cash bail, he said, referencing a legal reality in many cities and states that have drawn his ear or ire. What else we got here? Although Chicago, it says, although his local authority outside Washington may be limited, Trump has floated interventions against crime outside the Capitol. So it's interesting to see how he plans to do this, right? The second city seems to be first in mind. If we need to, we're going to do the same thing in Chicago, he said during his August 11th press conference. And if they rule against that and say, no, you can't do that, or a judge strikes it down, we'll see what happens then. Okay, because now they need to escalate. They need to find another way around. Let's see what else we got here. New York City. He says here, or in quotes, I'm going to look at New York in a little while, Trump said. Though rates and numbers differ, New York City's violent crime trends resemble Chicago's. See that? So that look at, I'm going to look at it in a little while. You know, that, what do you think that means? Right? He says it like, oh, you know, I'm considering it, or it's possible. Those possibilities and considerations turn into reality. It says here in 2024, there were 29,461 felonious assaults in the city, up from recent years, from trolls as low as 16,284 in 2008. Rape was also up with 1,000 or 1,748 incidents that year as compared to 1,455 in 2023. And then we have here Los Angeles, Baltimore, and Oakland. Hopefully LA is watching, Trump said during his press conference. He also referenced another California city, Oakland, and nearby Baltimore, saying the two are so far gone. So what he's doing is he's basically saying, look, we need to, I'm not just stopping right at immigration and, you know, migrants and so on. I'm showing you that my method of doing this works. All right. And with that, I'm going to take that everywhere I need to take it in order to turn this place back into that world dominant country. OK, but I need to clean it up from within first. All right. And then at the same time, right, he can then tout that, oh, I brokered peace between Israel and Iran, and I'm in the middle of doing that with Russia and Ukraine, right? So it's this last hurrah, right? This sort of, wow, he's really making it great again, you know, investing in you know, the whole like crypto and the AI and all of that. But the Lord does that, right? As it says, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So the Lord sets them up. And once this kingdom is at its zenith, people are in that mindset of, damn, this is good. Shit is boom. All right. You're done. You're done though. Anyway, let me get this real quick. This is in the book of Isaiah chapter 47. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, this is Isaiah 47 and 11. It says, therefore shall evil come upon thee. That in Isaiah 47, we know is going into Babylon. Okay, the destruction of Babylon, here being America today. Right? It says, therefore evil shall come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. And that's going to be a great shaking to a lot of people who have lived comfortably in wickedness, right, in opposition to the ways of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, because that's what it all comes down to. All of these things boil down to the judgment of the Heavenly Father, which is very eminently coming upon this place. So with that, Lord willing, you are edified and informed. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham Recha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.